Welcome CSE 121, Programming 1 online, and this is our random number guesser, and from the title you can figure out what we're going to do. We're going to guess random numbers, and the whole idea of using random numbers is going to make our Python programs more interesting. We'll introduce the element of chance as far as what's going to happen in there. So random numbers can do that. They're generated, but we're not generating them. So just like conditional statements introduce different kind of paths, random numbers will also generate results that we can't really follow until they come out. So that's what we're going to do here. And we're going to start with something real simple. We're just going to guess a random number. Just like if someone was standing in front of you and said, I'm thinking of a number, and they have their hands behind their back between 1 to 10. And you're just guessing it. That's all we're going to do is we're just going to guess a number. And we're also going to see how many times it takes to guess that number. So what we're going to introduce here is going to be something called the random module, which is basically a Python file that needs to be imported. It's not part of the regular Python set. When you work with it, you have to import it in. Just like the turtle module, it has its own set of methods. The random module has its own set of methods, and it's able to generate a random number. And the nice thing about this one is we could generate an integer between 1 and 10, inclusive of both of these. So we don't have to be multiplying by 10. Sometimes JavaScript makes it a little difficult because they generate a random number that's less than 1, which then you have to do all kinds of math just to get a random number. So this makes it pretty easy. And we're just going to make a variable that represents that random number. So we're going to let the computer generate a random number. And we always have to say random.randint. Randint is the method of that module, of the random module. So we're going to say random.randint, and then we're going to put in the numbers that range. So it's going to generate a random number like 5. And then we're going to run a while loop, and we're just going to say while true. Now remember, while true is basically an infinite loop. It'll just keep running, except we're going to use a break. So as long as you have something that's going to break a loop, you don't have to worry about it being infinite. So we can break it here. So if we guess the number, we're going to break it. If not, we're going to use something called continue, which will keep us in the loop. So that'll keep us in the loop until it ends. So it could go on. If we don't ever guess the number, it'll keep going on. But this will let us start the loop again. Although it is while true, we may not need it actually. So let's see what happens here. Last year when we did this, we put continue in here, and actually continue will let us restart the loop, but we'll try with or without that. But anyway, let's just see how it works here. So we're going to enter a number between 1 and 10. Now I'm going to come up with something like 3, and it says please try again, and I'll try 9. And it says please try again, and I'm going to go with lucky 7. And I'll try 1, and I think I was going to try 5, and it's not that. Try 6, and it's finally 6, and it took me 7 guesses. It counted the guesses, so we used our counter there, and notice the loop kept going on until I got there, until I finally got to the part it would not break until my guess was the same as a random number. So every time I was punching in my guess, it wasn't matching up to the random number. And then at the end, we have just a print statement that has an F string that says you took this many guesses to match the number. And then it tells me what the number was. So it says you took 7 guesses to match the number 6. So very simple kind of exercise here, but it is going to review while loop. It's going to review counters. It's going to review conditionals. It's going to review break. It's going to introduce continue, which we may or may not need. I have to double check. I may not even need continue there because the while loop should just continue without that if we come here. If we print it out, it should just go back to the beginning, and we'll use this random module here. So we'll try it out. So what you're going to do is, if you go to the W3 schools, that's always a quick place to go to just review something, and you go to Python and you go to numbers. Now this is all kinds of stuff about numbers, but if you scroll down, you'll see something about random number, and this one says random.randrange. And it's saying it's 1 to 10, but it doesn't include 10. It only goes up to 9. And we're going to use randint. So I'm going to go to my random module reference here, and it'll have all of the methods from the random module. See here it says methods. Anything that has like the module name dot, that's typically a method. And here's different methods here. There's all different ones. We're not going to use a whole bunch here. And this is the random one. You can see it produces a number between 0 and 1, a float number. That's what JavaScript does when you try to generate a random number. And then you have to multiply it by 10 to get a real integer. They have randint in here, and it looks the same. It looks like it's doing the same thing. And if you click on randint, it actually has a little thing. It says this method is an alias, meaning a shortcut for randrange. So it's actually taking randrange and it's giving the full range. So we're just going to use randint. because it includes the first and second number that you show there. So we're just going to use randint, but just keep in mind there is something randrange where it doesn't include the last number. It goes up to the last number, but we're going to use randint. So let's go back and do that. So you could read more about that if you want. All right, and now it's time to run through our random guesser exercise. And I think this is going to be exercise 9 for spring 23. And I'm going to create a new rappel. I'll go up here to create, and it's going to be Python. And I'm going to call it 8-random number. And I'll just call it random number, I guess, guesser, so I know what it is. We're going to be using random numbers for other things, such as dice games and rocks, paper, scissors, but this is just to test it out. So I'll put my initials here and put your initials. If you just want to put guess, you don't have to put guesser. Random number guess is fine. And this will be exercise 8. It was exercise 9 in the past, but so let's create. And the first thing we'll do is create a variable for our random number. And I'm going to close this up, move this over, and we'll just call our random number Rn. So I'm going to put Rn for random number. I use that a lot. And we're going to assign it to the value of random.randint. And it's all one word, and there's no capital here either. And then I'm going to put a range of 1 through 10. Now with randint, we could put any integers in here. That's the nice thing about it. We'll just do 1 through 10. Now we have a red wavy line. Why do we have a red wavy line? You should know already because we just talked about it. Because random, we don't have the module. So we have to import the module. So let's go here, and I'll put an extra line, and I'll just put import random. And again, importing random, it's really importing this file, but we don't put the py. So we're just using import random. So now the red line went away. So that's working. And just to see what's going on here, we could just print Rn and just see what's going on and have a lot of fun with it. Wait till you see how fun this is. Ready? Here we go. I'll bring it over closer. 5. Let me guess. I'm going to guess 3. 10. Let me guess 3 again. It's 8. Let me guess 5. It's 8. Let me guess 3. It's 8. Let me guess 7. Oh, now it's 3. All right. It's pretty tough. So this will be a tough one. So those are our random numbers. And again, sometimes it'll repeat ones like 4 times in a row, and you'll think, wait a minute, something's wrong here. But that way we see what's happening here. So we're printing out a random number. Now, we don't need to print that out right now. We can even comment that out. So I'm going to do command ? Or command /. That way, whenever we need to see it, we can see it. If we ever have a problem and something's not working, we could kind of cheat and see what it is and make sure it's working first. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make a print statement at the end that's going to count up the guesses, and it's also going to tell us, we're going to make a print statement at the end that's going to tell us how many chances it took to pick the correct random number, and it's even going to tell us what it is. So we can do that. Let's put the print statement. So we'll do another print statement, and inside there we'll use an F string, and we could sometimes put the string outside it as a statement, but we could put it all in here right now. So we're going to do F, and then we could start our quotes, and then I'll just put you took, and then we don't know how many. So we're going to just put curly braces and put count, and we'll say guesses. Now we may change that, so if we took one guess, we want to change it so it could be one guess. It's that grammar issue. But right now we'll just put guesses to match, and we'll put to match, and then we'll put the random number. And we have all our variables accounted for. We have Rn, we have count. No, we don't have count yet. So we have to make a variable or assign a variable to count. And we'll just do a counter like we did in our previous video. So we could go here and just do count equals 0. We'll start at 0, and then we'll start counting up. So we'll start at 0, so now it's assigned. And right now, if we printed this out, it would say count 0 and whatever the number is. So let's just see what happens here. We'll just run it. You took 0 guesses to match 5. So 5 is the random number that came up from here. And it took 0 guesses because we didn't count anything yet. So we didn't count anything. So we're going to do an input so that we can count it. And then we'll also make an input that continues. Now, we already did a while loop, so this shouldn't be that hard. We should know how to do it. And we're going to do a while true. So we're going to go down here, and we're going to start off and just put while true. That makes an infinite loop. And what's going to happen while true? Well, we're going to do an input. So we'll just call it, we could call it pick, we could call it guess. I think I might call it pick because last time I called it guess, and then we had a variable called guesses here. So I'll just put pick because we're going to pick the number. pick the number. Somebody has a number behind their back. We're going to pick it. So we're going to pick it. And then that's going to be assigned to an input. So I'll put input. And we'll just put pick a number from 1 through 10. And again, I didn't put it in a string, so I'm going to put it in a string and put quotes around it. Pick a number from 1 to 10. And I always like to put a colon. Undo that because it was highlighted. I always like to put a colon and then a space so that the prompt isn't right up against it. Pick a number from 1 to 10. And then what we're going to do is we're going to see if we get that number right. So if our pick is equal to the random number, so we're going to be finding out if our pick is equal to the random number, then we're going to stop it. Once we get it, then we're going to stop this loop. And if not, it'll keep going. So let's set up an if statement here. So we'll say if pick, our pick is equal, has to be the same, equal to Rn, and then we'll put a colon, then what's going to happen? Then it's going to break. So it'll end. Then we got it. And then what's going to happen is this print statement will happen after the break because this print statement is not part of our loop. So it'll happen after the loop. So this will print out. So if our number is the same as that, it'll break it. So otherwise, this will keep going on. So let's see what happens here. Pick a number from 1 to 10. I'm going to go 4. And I'll hit enter. And then it says that's obviously not right. So I'm going to hit 3. And I'll hit 2. And I'll hit 5. And 6, 7, 8, 9. Try 8 again. 9. So eventually we'll get to it if we go through all of them. Let me put in 10. And 1. Did we do all of them? How about 1? How about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? So it looks like we got all the numbers. Our pick doesn't seem to match it. So let's try this. Let's uncomment that and bring that back. And let's just run this again. Let's stop this and let's run it. Pick a number from 1 to 10. Now it's saying it's 3. Let's see if we get it right. What happens? 3. And it's continuing. So it's not breaking our loop. So there's a problem there. Now this is a logical error. What is our logical error or a semantic error? Well, the error is
we should take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else.
We're putting in a number and what's being returned? A string. And actually, let's put this. It should be after we pick it. It's 5. Let me put in 5. It keeps going, but it's saying class is an int of Rn, and that's a string. That's our problem. It's not matching up. They're not equivalent because they're different data types. So what do we have to do? Well, we could get rid of this stuff. Our problem is we need to convert this, our input, to an int. And we could do it after the fact, or we could do it right now. And I'll do it right now. I'll just put int and wrap it around our whole input prompt. So let's put that there. And now it's going to be an int, and now it'll compare it to the number 3. So that's a string, and then we're comparing it to the random number that's being generated. That's going to be a number. It's an int. Remember, that's an int, and this is a string. So now we got to make this an int. So now we should be okay. So it was good to kind of go through that and find out what's going on. Now, let me backspace here so this doesn't look so bad. So now we have our input, and now this is getting converted to an integer, and now we could run it, and it's saying 6. So let's put in 6. We'll cheat. And it says you took 0 guesses to match 6. And we could put a period in here. So now it's working. And now if we want to use the count, what we could do is after every pick, we could increment the count. And we can put count, and we can use plus equals. Remember, don't use equals, because if you use equals first, if you do equals plus 1, something like that, that just means it equals to 1. So remember, this is the same as count equals count plus 1, and we already did this, but just to review, it's the same as saying count equals count plus 1, but we're just going to put plus equals 1. And that just means it's going to increment each time we do a pick. So now count will be incremented, and now it should show us the proper number. So let's run through it. And notice we didn't put an else here. We could have put a try again or whatever, but the pick keeps coming up. And one thing you could also do with a pick is put a \n, and it's not a /n. You got to use a \n. And let's run it. Okay, so there's our 9, and it's saying pick a number from 1 to 10. And I'll put in 9. It says you took 1 guesses to match 9. So that's the problem we have with the grammar. And we could also put a \n here, \n, just to separate things a little bit. And let's do this for real. Let's try to see how many times it takes us to get it. Let's see how good at guessing I am here, if I can actually see how many guesses it took. So instead of just printing out the random number, I'm going to comment that out. So we just use that for testing purposes. So I'll just do command ? Or you could just put the # right in front of it. And let's run it. Let's do this for real. I'm ready this time. I'm going to pick 2. I'm going to pick 4. I'm going to pick 6. I'm going to pick 8, 10. Oh, it was 10. Took me 5 guesses to match 10. I went all with the evens here to pick it out. So there's all my inputs, there's all my guesses. Now, one other thing we could do here is to match the grammar, we can actually go inside here and do a nested if-else statement. So we'll do a nested if-else statement. We'll go in here and we'll say if, and what are we saying if about? What's going to determine whether we use guesses or guess? Well, or count, really. If our count is 1, is equals 1, then we're going to use guess. Otherwise, we're going to use guesses. So if count equals 1, then we're going to make a variable here, and let's call it guess. We'll make a variable called guess. And we're going to say if count equals 1, then guess, we'll declare it or assign it, guess equals, and that's how we assign it, guess equals guess. Spell it right. And else, we're going to put an else here. And we got to go back and we'll put else because it's either going to be 1 or not. Else, and we don't have to put a condition here, guess equals guesses. And again, we're using a string. So it'll say guesses if it's anything not 1. And notice we're doing it here right after the pick. So it's only if we match it. We're not worried about the grammar unless we match it. So that's why we're putting it in here, because this if pick equals rn, that means we matched it. That means we got it right. And then if we got it right, then we're also going to figure out if we want to use guess or guesses. So that's part of it. So, and notice we don't have an else here. We're just breaking at the end here. So we don't necessarily need an else. We'll determine later if that's going to hurt us or not, but I think we're okay here since we're in this loop. It shouldn't matter. There's some cases where it may matter, but in this case it should matter. And let's run it. And I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it took me 6 guesses to match 6. And let's just, instead of trying this forever here, let's try and get it right and see if it uses 1 guess. So it's 2. So I'll put in 2. You took 1 guess to match 2. So that's it. So that's it. That's our random number guesser. There's nothing else we have to do here, but we are going to incorporate this into more interesting type games, like dice games, and you could do a baseball game, you could do all kinds of things. Rocks, paper, scissors. Now that we have random numbers, we could have a little more fun with it, and we could do random things. Even when we use turtles, we could make random designs and things like that, random numbers of sides, all kinds of stuff like that. So random will kind of open up a little more fun that we'll be able to do with Python instead of just doing test scores and stuff like that. So this is kind of our basis. This is kind of our foundation. So I want you to understand what happens here. And again, we used a nested if-else statement, a nested conditional statement. That's part of that. We're breaking a loop that continues. And then we're also using a print statement here just to test it out. So we don't have to, keep guessing forever, and you don't have to watch me keep guessing here. And, we could do things with like lottery numbers and all kinds of stuff like that. I think we do one where we do a lottery number, and not only do we pick the lottery number, but we also can pick it if it's boxed, meaning it has the same 3 numbers, but not in the same order. And that'll be another exercise that we do. So this is exercise 8. So this is just kind of a basis for some of the things we're going to be doing for exercises ahead with random numbers. So when you're done, just take that, put it in exercise 8. That is going to be in Unit 4.